And now coming on the show, we have former U.S. men's national team defender and Hannover captain, the great Steve Cherundolo. How's it going, Steve?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate you coming on. How are things in Germany right now with the coronavirus?
Um, Actually, going pretty well. Compared to from what I hear back home from family and friends, normalcy is creeping back into our lives. Apart from wearing masks, going shopping, and being
Hmm.
indoors, everything is pretty opened. And my kids are excited about getting school started up in a couple of weeks. So.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure that will give you a little bit of a relief too, sending them back to school.
It always does. Yeah, it frees up a little time for the parents. Yeah.
Well, it's crazy just because coronavirus here every time, every week, it seems like the virus seems to get worse. So y'all must be doing something better over there than we are over here.
Well, I think if you don't change anything from the top down, then nothing's going to get better. Just by
Yep.
hoping and continuing on the same course and maintaining status quo, nothing will get better. So I think that's one of the differences. I think the European Union had done
Hmm.
a little better. As a whole, there were mandatory masks from day one,
Right.
um, and obviously a 14-day quarantine when they shut everything down. So that has seemed to have helped. They were very adamant about that, and I think they're reaping the benefits because of it.
Hmm. And how long have you lived in Germany now? Over 20 years, right?
Yeah, half my life. It's
Like,
pretty crazy. So
wow. Well, how are you? You're obviously enjoying it. Are you still in Hanover?
yes, we are. We lived in Stuttgart for a little over a year
Hmm.
during my time at VfB Stuttgart, but we have recently then since then moved back to Hanover, and
Hmm.
yeah, we're happy and we like it.
Nice. Well, I understand that you're coaching now, and how has that experience been so far for you? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, it's quite a transition going from player to coach. I think as a player you have a somewhat of an idea of what coaches are thinking, but
Hmm.
at least that's what I thought until I actually got into coaching and understood that it's a whole new ball game and a completely different job. Um, when you're talking about responsibility as a player, you're pretty much responsible for yourself, and that's it. Aside from being captain, you may have a little bit of extra responsibility or added responsibility, but um, as a captain, you're still only responsible for your own performances, but as a coach, you're responsible for everybody
Right, right.
on and off the field. So that changes the way you see things. It changes the way you work, and that certainly changes the way you are judged. So
Hmm.
it's a whole new ball game. But I'm far along in that transition, and I feel very comfortable now being a coach.
Well, congratulations. And I just saw that you got your UEFA Pro license. What exactly does that allow you to do now?
Well, it's basically a driver's license to drive any car in the world of football or soccer.
Hmm.
So I have now my badge to coach any team necessary in the professional game or in youth, whatever.
Right, right. And are you coaching for are you an assistant for the US right now?
No, right now I am helping the DFB out with their youth national teams
Hmm.
and helping them periodically from camp to camp. But I am not affiliated with a club right now,
Gotcha.
so it's just with the German Football Federation right now.
Got it. Well, that's great to hear that you're still involved with the game. You obviously had an incredible career in Germany and with the U.S. national team, and I'm really excited to talk with you about your time as a professional footballer. I know you're so busy, and I really thank you for taking the time to do this. But we're going to focus on your club career to start, and then after that, we'll get into your experience with the national team. Um, but before we get into that, you were born in Illinois, then moved to San Diego, which is where you grew up, correct?
That is correct. I was born in Rockford, Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think just before second grade started, so it must have been 7 or 8. We moved to San Diego, which is where I grew up, and obviously first started playing soccer in Rockford, but then started focusing on it more in San Diego. Um, with the At that point they were called the La Jolla Nomads, which I believe now
Mm-hmm.
are the San Diego Nomads. Still run by the same family, which was a wonderful club and a wonderful experience, and truly a blessing in disguise being able to be a part of that club at that point.
Yeah, and I saw that when you played for La Jolla, you guys won the California State Championship 6 times.
Yeah, it was funny because there was always a battle between Arsenal, who were based out of LA,
Mm-hmm.
and us in the final every year. Arsenal seemed to win every single tournament throughout the season leading up to the state to the state championships. But the state championships we always won. So it was my roommate in the national team, who did play at Arsenal at the time. It was pretty funny looking back at that every Carlos Bocanegra. It
Oh,
was funny
really?
looking back at that a lot and laughing about those days where we seemed to show up when it mattered most, and they picked up all of the unnecessary trophies, and we always picked up the important one.
Um, well, then after that, I saw you went and played at the University of Portland. Did you have offers from any other colleges?
Yeah, there was interest at that time from UCLA and
Mm-hmm.
Duke University. But I found that the University of Portland at the time, with their staff and with Clive Charles, who was no longer with us, and as well as the team and the way that the university and the sports program were set up, was a better fit for me.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout my recruiting trips, it was something that was very clear to me after I visited all 3 schools that that's the place for me. And I ended up deciding for then. And in retrospect, I think it was the right decision as well. So
Mm-hmm.
the year and a half I spent there was extraordinary, and I had a fantastic time and learned so much, not only about the game, but also as a young man how to grow up, and the first time being away from home. So it really set me up for the rest of my time here in Europe.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, Portland itself is such a beautiful city. So yeah, understandable that you chose to play there. And I saw that you won the West Coast Conference Freshman of the Year in your first season. And were you playing as a defender during that season? Or did you grow up playing as a defender? Is that something that you kind of transitioned to later on?
No, I transitioned to it later on. I grew up just in the middle of midfield, kind of
Mm-hmm.
playing as a center midfielder. And I think, the further you go back, in the very beginnings, you're all over the place. You're there where the
Right.
ball is. And then I played a little forward at some point, and then gradually found a home in the middle of midfield. Um, and then moving on from club ball and high school, and moving into college, I was involved with the youth national teams, the under 18 team. At that time, Ziggy Schmidt was the coach,
Mm-hmm.
who was also no longer with us, unfortunately. And he had found a position for me in the middle of midfield, but also at that point in time, we still played with a sweeper, sort of um, a type of sweeper that would defend in the back and kind of
Right.
gradually move into mid. And Clive Charles was then the next coach of mine with the Olympic team, and there was a vacancy, as a right back position. And he tried me out there, and it worked out fine. And then at University of Portland, there was a little bit of everything. There was outside back, there was a center back, there was midfield. So it was kind of playing everywhere we needed somebody of my ability to play.
Right.
So yeah, I think the answer to your question is, I think my development happened as a center midfielder, but then
Mm-hmm.
my home became a defender.
And did you like playing defender more than in the middle of the park?
Well, I think, looking back at my career and my attributes as a player, I enjoyed um, I enjoyed very much seeing and defending players in training and not allowing them to score.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have a natural ability to defend things. Some players do, and some players have a natural ability to think creative and move towards goal. They're not too keen on defending or tackling or putting in the hard work. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that always came natural to me. So I do think even if I was a midfielder, I would be more of a defensive-minded midfielder,
Right.
if you will. So yeah, I think defending is something natural to me.
Mm-hmm. And so you said you were at Portland for a year and a half. So did you play with them for what, a season before
Two
you left for
seasons.
2 seasons? Okay. And then after that, you moved to Germany to start playing professionally, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
And what made you decide to do that? I mean, did Hanover spot you playing for the national team? I mean, what's the backstory and how that came together?
Well, I always knew. I mean, growing up in my club, we had coaches from all over Europe, well, mostly the UK,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a very large influence on myself and other players. And we grew up watching VHS cassettes of uh, of English football, and that really got me set on wanting to move to Europe and being a part of that. If I were given the chance at some point. And some of my discussions with the colleges while I was being recruited were, hey, I want to go, but I'm ready. And Clive made it very clear to me. He said, okay, I'll get you ready, and when you're ready, I'll send you on your way. And that was something that was very influential in my decision in deciding for a college. And I had an opportunity at Hanover due to the time with the under 20s. Ziggy Schmidt was the coach, and we had a training camp in the summer of '98 in Germany. We were there about 14 days, and we had some friendly games against some clubs in the west of Germany. I think Dortmund were one of them. And at that game, the manager of Hanover at that point, his name was Franz Gerber. He had, I think he was scouting some Dortmund players, to be honest with you, and he had seen me, and he knew Ziggy as well as the other assistant coach, Wolfgang Zunholz, for our under 20 team.
Mm-hmm.
And they must have exchanged a few words about me as a person, as a player, and he asked if I would come over on trial, but I'd already committed to another year or season or semester at University of Portland. So we stayed in touch, and then in December of '98, I went back to Hanover, or I went to Hanover on trial for a week. Franz Gerber still liked what he saw, and then I had a chat with Clive, and Clive felt comfortable sending me on my way. He said, "You were ready?" I said I was ready, and then I didn't hesitate, and I signed. So that's the backstory to Hanover '96.
Mm-hmm. So you moved to Germany, completely different environment, different culture, don't know many people, don't know the language. I mean, how was that transition like for you at only 19 years old?
Yeah, it was rocky at best to start.
Mm-hmm.
In my trial, Portland was great in the sense that it got me used to some colder weather and some rain and some wetness and some wind,
Mm-hmm.
which we didn't have too much of in Southern California. Um, but my trial in Germany, when I flew over and I looked out the window of the plane when we got below the clouds, everything was white. So there was snow everywhere. And my trial ended up being on snow-covered fields,
Oh
which was the
man.
first experience for me playing in snow, which was interesting. But it worked out. I mean, you just gotta think a little ahead and plan a little ahead. It took me a day to get used to it, but after that, things were fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there were some culture differences, some language differences. But for me, I'm a very goal-oriented person, and just kind of keep my eyes on the prize that kept me going and kept me focused. And that's what maybe got me through some hard times in the beginning. But other than
Mm-hmm.
that, I just loved what I did and what I'm still doing now
Yeah.
so much that that really is the fuel behind it all.
And what is the city of Hanover like?
Hanover's history is more of an industrial city, but it's turned into one of the greenest cities in all of Europe. And so
Hmm.
it's a city built kind of right in the middle of a forest. It's beautiful. There's some water here. There's some lakes. There's some rivers. Lots of greenery, um, and but it's big enough to where you can still explore and discover new corners even
Mm-hmm.
after 20 years. But it's small enough to where you still see familiar faces. So it has that really good mix of big city and small town.
Right. Are you how often do you get recognized around town?
Yeah, it's actually died off over the past couple
Oh, really?
years, but yeah, just yesterday it happened again, and my wife she had a little giggle, and my kids found it funny as well too. Why does a strange man want a photo with dad? Um, so yeah, my kids weren't born until after I retired, so it was
Right.
they didn't get a whole lot of that yet. So
Mm-hmm.
it's dying off, but it still happens from time to time.
So were you immediately thrown in with the first team, or did you play with the reserves for a bit?
No, I immediately started with the first team.
Wow.
The first 6 months I was here, and then that coach who had brought me over and manager, they were released, and then a new coach came in. I wasn't his cup of tea, and then I played for a few months, I think about 3 or 4 months with the
Mm-hmm.
second team. And then he was released. And then the next coach who came in brought me right back up, and I played again. So it was only a 3-4 month stint that I wasn't involved with the first team.
Right.
And then, after that, things worked out well.
Well, your first season in 98, 99, you made 8 appearances, established yourself as, for that coach, the first choice right back. And then the following season in 99, 2000, you were starting consistently and playing games until you injured your knee, which kept you out until the end of the season and prevented you from playing in the Olympics with the U.S. What happened with that injury?
Yeah, it was just a poor tackle in training where I got caught just shielding the ball, and somebody came in and thought they were able to see the ball, and they kind of tackled my planted leg, and knee got twisted the wrong way and tore my ACL. It was unfortunate because we had a really good group heading into the Olympics, and the result speaks for itself. The boys did a fantastic job and finished in 4th. It was a special group. We loved being part of it, but that's the way this business goes. Sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. So, unfortunately, injuries was a setback. But after that, I continued to stay pretty much injury free most of the time. Like here and there, a little nick, but after that, things had gone very well.
Well, the following season in 2000, 2001, it just seemed like you picked up right where you left off, making 19 appearances and 10 starts. Then in 2001, 2002, you made 32 appearances. You guys won the league and were promoted to the Bundesliga. And what I found interesting was over those 4 seasons that you played in the second division with Hannover, you guys finished in 4th, 10th, 9th, and then 1st. How did you guys manage to win the league after finishing in the middle of the pack 2 seasons in a row?
Well, when I first moved there, the team had just been promoted from the 3rd division to the 2nd division. And there was a lot of euphoria in the city and in the club. And then we had a good push in that season. And we're very nearly promoted in that first season in the 2nd division. Just sort of, we had a really good group of players, a lot of good young players. And after that season, a lot of these young players who ended up having fantastic careers and playing for the German national team ended up leaving. And so it was clear after that season there was still a lot of work to do in the roster. It took the club about 2 years to figure that out, and then a new coach came on. And ironically, I didn't play right back at Hanover until that final season in the 2nd division. Prior to that, I was playing a lot of center midfield and helping out. We played a lot of just straight wingers back then, kind of, as in all things in fashion as well as in this game. What we did 20 years ago seems to be modern now, and I think a lot of clubs are moving to these just strict wingers and man marking in the back, and there's a lot of man marking all over the pitch now. If you're watching the Champions League now, Atalanta Bergamo has been very successful with this. And that's just a style of soccer or football that was played 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So everything that was cool back then or successful back then usually comes back into play at some point. That last season in the 2nd division, I played right back. And I think what really worked out for us was we had a coach, and he was the first German coach to really play with a back 4 in Germany, and he did it very successfully. And I was the only player who was really schooled in that and grew up in a back 4. Due to my club coaches being English and my college coach being English. So it was natural for me, and I was a big help to him understanding how our back line worked. And that's kind of where I got stuck, really. That's where I found my niche in Hanover and a position, and never left it since.
And so before that, were most teams in Germany playing with 3 in the back?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Well, a trait of yours that I always appreciated was your composure. I mean, always so calm and collected, never seemed very panicked. And I feel like that helped give your teammates a sense of composure on the pitch, especially under pressure. Is that an accurate observation?
Yeah, I think so. I think part of that is, my soccer upbringing as a central midfielder, and then my first couple of years as a professional playing in the central midfield, because you have less time and you have more things to worry about, and orientation and awareness becomes extremely important in the middle of the park. Things can go wrong very quickly, and when you're playing on the outside of the pitch, you may not have as much time, but there's a sideline right behind you, and so there are a few options you can already cancel out as far as counter pressure goes, right from the back, right from the bat. So the position in some way is a little more simple, but in other ways more demanding because you have less options.
Right. Well, your first season in the Bundesliga, you made 33 appearances and you guys finished in 11th. What would you say was the biggest difference between the second division and the Bundesliga?
Well, I think in anytime you jump up from one division to another or from one competition to another, and if you're talking about Bundesliga play and you go into like European League or Champions League or
Right.
World Cup, the things that change is the amount of time, space, and dynamic of play. And so if you're talking about decision making or actual physicality, that all changes. And really in the second division, you'll find that it may look like in the first division players have time and space, but that time and space and those options get closed down quicker than the second division. And the other biggest difference, I think, is that mistakes you make in lower divisions aren't punished as often as they are in the higher divisions. And I think if you watch a World Cup and if you watch finals, and we will see two finals in the next week with the Champions League and European League, finals are very tight and there are very few mistakes made, and because every mistake can be punished, and that could be the deciding factor in the game.
Right. And I mean, throughout the rest of your Hannover career in the Bundesliga, Hannover certainly made a name for themselves, finishing consistently in the middle of the pack 7 seasons in a row between 2002 2009, which is very difficult to do. And during this 8-10 year stretch, was the squad relatively the same during that period in terms of players and management?
I think there was a core of players who were management. No, management always changed. That's always been the one constant in Hanover, that there's always been change at that position, which unfortunately, I think the club would be further along than they are today if they would take a different approach, but that's not the approach they're taking. So, but within the team in the locker room, we had some consistency. And myself and one of my longtime teammates, Atin Lala, he was there the entire time I was there as well. And so there was consistency inside the locker room and in the team around the team, so in the staff, which was very important for players who came on. It was really easy to integrate them into the way we did things and the way we thought and the way we held our position in the league.
And in your experience, what are the qualities of a great teammate, and who was the best teammate you ever played with?
Oh, I can't give you an answer to the second question, but great qualities. I mean, just thinking about the national teams you played with, guys who I looked up to, guys who were really responsible, who I learned a ton from. I mean, the list goes on and on with the men's national team, whether you're talking about a guy like Claudio Reyna, Casey Keller. These are all guys who, Eddie Pope, who I thought were fantastic. And I just by watching them and a few conversations with them, I learned so much from. And players who I developed more of a intense relationship with, like Tim Howard and Carlos Bocanegra, Jada Merritt, Stuart Holden, to name a few. It goes beyond just their qualities as players and professionals. It becomes more personal. Right. Which also make them an amazing teammate. So, I think when you're scouting at players, I like to look at players in 4 different categories. You have a technical side, you have a physical side, you have a tactical side, and then you have the mentality side. And when you're talking about teammates, I would add a 5th component as well. And that would be on a personal level, how well you connect with that human being. Which makes them an extraordinary piece to the puzzle, which a team is all about. It's about mixing or finding the right pieces to the puzzle and getting them all together. And that is all about roster building. And once you're in the roster, if you're a part of the team representatives or if you're a captain, it's making sure all of the pieces of the puzzle fit.
Right.
And that's what I tend to look for in teammates.
And do you think winning is the result of team chemistry, or is team chemistry the result of winning?
I would say team chemistry will guarantee you getting the quality that is in your roster put out into points. Now,
Right.
doing something special with a team, winning a championship, or if you've just been promoted, finishing in the top third of the table would be something extraordinary for me from a team that's just been promoted. So success is always relative, but getting the absolute most out of a group always starts with team chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving beyond that, having an extraordinary season would mean that on a personal level, those players also understand each other brilliantly and things just worked out perfect.
Right. Then in 2009, 2010, you guys finished in 15th, one spot above the relegation zone before finishing in fourth the following season in 2010-11 and qualified for the Europa League. Was that finish, was that, dramatic of an improvement the result of a management change?
No, I think looking back at that season, a lot of things went wrong. There were some injuries. I think the roster choices at that point, we had some issues. There was some issues in hierarchy. Myself and teammates were kind of the older regime, and people were looking to change that a little bit. And so we had kind of lost influence in the team.
Mm-hmm.
The media had been interested in something new. There's always something new around the corner, but I always say if something is not broken, there's no need to fix it.
Right.
And so there were some internal issues within the group, and because of the poor results, and then moving on towards the end of the season, there was a traumatic loss of our goalkeeper who had committed suicide,
Oh, dear.
who was an extremely important person in the team, not only as far as character, but also his playing ability. He was at that point Germany's #1 keeper.
Mm.
We were very fortunate to have him playing for our club, and he had committed suicide, and that was really a wake up call to everybody. Say, okay, there's something bigger going on here than our own individual agendas, and that really gelled us together. I mean, we were a sinking ship before that,
Mm.
and after that, because it took us a while to kind of get through that loss as a group, but we did find a way through there and stayed in the division. And then use those lessons we learned in that really difficult time as a club, as a team, and as individuals, and use that in the following season, and that propelled us into something. But the lessons we learned and from the prior season enabled us, and our respect for one another enabled us to excel even further and achieve something extraordinary.
Yeah, what an amazing story. I had no idea that goalkeeper had done that, but it seemed like you guys only used it as fuel to do what you did, and that's very impressive. And before that 2010-11 season, after the World Cup in South Africa, you were appointed captain of Hannover. How did that make you feel about taking on that role?
Yeah, it was nothing new. The prior captain, he was the goalkeeper, committed suicide. So, and prior to him, it was my best friend who was in the team the entire 15 years that I was there. He retired a few years earlier, so it was sort of a changing from they kind of from the old to the new, and then back to the old. So it was something completely natural to me. Because
Mm-hmm.
prior to the goalkeeper, who unfortunately is no longer with us, prior to him, I'd also had um, been captain a few times and was always, as a team representative, was always the second captain. So it was nothing new to me, and it was completely natural. So something that it followed me throughout my youth teams as well, and youth national teams. So it was just a natural role, and I really don't believe that just because somebody has the captain's armband that they become a captain. I think
Right.
leadership is something you have or you don't have, and it doesn't necessarily mean that one is better or worse. It's just something that you either do or you don't do. And I personally believe that there are a lot of leaders and super important players out there who lead without the captain's armband.
Right. I totally agree. Well, then in 2011-12, you guys finished in 7th in the Bundesliga, made it to the quarterfinals of the Europa League before getting knocked out by Atletico Madrid, who ended up winning the whole thing. But what was it like playing against Diego Simeone's Atletico? Because he took over not long before that game.
Yeah, I mean, it was very similar to what we see today. I mean, he hasn't changed his
Yep.
style at all. It was an
Mm-hmm.
extremely difficult team to beat. And that's what he's all about. He gets results. He does everything he can do to win games. Um, I think if you break down his game technically, obviously he spends more time working without the ball than he does with the ball. But
Mm-hmm.
um, if it means that his team needs to be good with the ball to win games, then they're able to do that as well. And that's what impresses me so much about his teams. They really are very well balanced. They can play both sides of the game. And yeah, I mean, for us, it was an unbelievable experience to be a part of that. We were probably in over our heads, but we definitely gave them a run for their money. And because we were such a difficult team as well to play against, it was very tight both games. And with a little more fortune and maybe with a little more quality, we could have made the impossible possible.
Yeah. Well, following that season in 2012-13, you guys once again competed in the Europa League, but finished in 10th in the league. Do you think that you guys had enough depth to compete in both the league and in Europe? I mean, what's the biggest challenge in playing in an international competition during your league season?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's definitely something that was very difficult. But I think we proved that in the first year after finishing fourth.
Right.
Like you said, with the European competition and making it quite far in the competition. So I remember that year I had well over 60 games, including the national team games
Right.
through the DFB Cup and then regular league games. So, and my appreciation for players who do that from year one in their career until the end of their career, I mean, it's a very special group of players who grow up in the big club systems, United, Liverpool, City, Barca, Madrid, Bayern Munich,
Mm-hmm.
these Dortmund. My respect grew immensely for those players who do that year in and year out. And we found it. Yes, it was difficult at times, but I think if your coaching staff and your athletic team is very good at maintaining fitness and monitoring fitness, better said, then I think it's definitely doable. What happened to us in the third season after that is the club started to sell off some quality, and then
Mm-hmm.
that's where it becomes difficult then to achieve that success on a regular basis.
Right. Well, you retired in 2014 after making a total of 423 appearances for Hannover, which is a record among U.S. players with a foreign club. And then 302 of those appearances were in the Bundesliga, which is a Hannover record for most appearances in the Bundesliga. I mean, how are you able to maintain that level of consistency for such a long time? I mean, that's an amazing accomplishment for any professional athlete.
I think it's just really being goal oriented. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. There were some things that I wanted to accomplish, and I never had set any goals as far as numbers go, amount of appearances. But I had a wise coach who once told me, try not to play. Try to play consistently good,
Mm-hmm.
and you can have a great game, and then a week later you can have a horrible game. And he said, instead of that, try to play consistently good, and that's something that I
Mm-hmm.
really tried to apply on my own game. And I found that was really the secret to success: that putting yourself on the field, regardless of who the coach was.
Mm-hmm.
There was really no arguments to not put him on the field because he's reliable, um, and he's good enough, and he can make a difference, and he's not going to cost us the game. So that's something that I just always tried to achieve, and I loved playing. I loved training. I loved this game,
Mm-hmm.
and to me, it made no sense to sit on the bench. And so I really tried to put myself in a position that I was always able to play, and I loved playing. And I think in hindsight, I probably made a mistake here and there trying to play through injuries because it cost me maybe a year or two in the end. But I loved playing so much that at that moment in time, it was worth the risk. Worth the risk.
Right. I mean, after what point did you tell yourself, you know what, I'm going to stay with Hanover my entire career? Because I know Bolton wanted to sign you in 2005, but you declined.
Yeah, there was always interest from different clubs, and something that very interests me as well. But I always had, for me, when transfer or when contract talks came up, there was three questions I always asked myself. I needed to be answered. It was, is the club um, developing, moving in the right direction? Am
Mm-hmm.
I developing as a player, moving in the right direction? Am I playing? Um, and those are the three questions that I really needed to ask myself. And every time my contract ran up in Hanover, there was interest from other clubs. I was able to answer those questions with a yes. If you're looking at it from a Hanover 96 standpoint, and I really just found no reason to go anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how my career ended up. We kept getting better and better and better. The club grew and grew and grew, and as well as financially. And I felt that I was still getting better as a player. I think something I share with young players as well, and as a coach, I felt I was developing as a player. Well, put it this way, I wasn't complete until I was 31, and so
Right.
towards more the end of my career, and then I was of a complete player. I think I felt comfortable that I had seen enough, that I wasn't surprised anywhere out in the field, and I was experienced enough to know what's going to happen next. But I was physically still capable to run with the best of them. So um, the development process goes on for a long, long time, and I think what helps that is making sure you're on the field and make sure you're playing.
Right. And who else did try to sign you besides Bolton? You remember all of them?
Yeah, I mean there was interest around the Bundesliga as well, with clubs like Schalke and Kaiserslautern at that time was in the first division. Maybe a few other teams in England as well. So there was always interest. There was always interest in the MLS, which I had planned on joining at some point, but
Yep.
injuries put a stop to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a fantastic career, and I'm very happy with it. I really have no regrets, but I would have loved to play. I would still love to be a player. I mean, it was a fantastic job, and every time I go out on the field now, I just enjoy playing. So it was a privilege.
Yep. Well, I believe that you truly did pave the way for Americans in the Bundesliga, and I'm sure you saw Tyler Adams' winner last week. Do you think that was the most important club goal scored by a U.S. men's national team player?
Certainly in that competition, yeah. Tyler's a fantastic individual and human being first and foremost. I had the opportunity to get to know him a little bit. I think what's brought him to this level is his mentality and his view about being a professional and what he wants to achieve in this game. So I really think Tyler is going to find himself um, and move into a starting position at Leipzig long term.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have a fantastic player. The key for Tyler is just maintaining his health and maintaining his level of play to where the coach cannot leave him off the field. So I think he's on the right track, and we'll monitor and follow him closely, and hoping for the best.
Well, you, certainly had an amazing career overall, but certainly in the Bundesliga, setting records, not only as just a U.S. player, but for Hannover, the club. So, yeah, a very impressive, consistent career. And now I just wanted to shift over to your international career with the U.S. And when was the first time you got called up to the national team? Was it with the U18s?
Yeah, the first youth national team I was involved in was the under 18s. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the under 17 boat I missed. I wasn't quite developed it far enough at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't quite ready. And then the first coach who brought me in was Ziggy Schmidt, who had taken over the under 18s. Yeah.
And do you remember getting that call?
Yeah, I mean, I was ecstatic. I had known Ziggy throughout youth soccer, had been involved with his summer camps, and really hoped that he would recruit me and go into UCLA and stuff. And when he was the under 18 coach, I was very fortunate to be involved in that. So we had known each other for a few years, and yeah, I was super ecstatic and couldn't wait to be involved with that group because it was such a great group of guys as well.
Right. And so you played with the national team and the University of Portland at the same time?
Yes. Yeah.
And how did that work? Did you just play with the US when you weren't playing for Portland, like in the off season?
Yeah, it works in the off season. So
Okay. Got
camps
it.
are not scheduled during college season, which is in
Got
the
it.
fall. So the schedules work out to where you can do both.
Right. Well, you ended up making 87 appearances for the senior U.S. men's team, included in 3 World Cup squads, but you were only able to play in 2 because you got injured right before that 2002 World Cup in training, so you weren't able to play, correct?
Yeah, it was a unfortunate situation. First and foremost for Chris Armas, who was involved in that team, who was injured in training camp prior to the World Cup. And I believe Greg Vanny was called up to replace Chris, and then Greg Vanny got injured, and then I was called up to replace Greg. Um, and then after the first group game, I was injured in training and I wasn't able to play. But what a fantastic experience for me to be involved in that group.
Mm-hmm.
There was a team full of leaders and excellent players. Just for me to see the level of play and to experience what it's like to be at a World Cup was extraordinary and important for my later experiences as a player in 2006 and 2010.
Right. And in the 2006 World Cup in Germany, the U.S. tied 1 game and lost 2 and finished bottom of the group. And then in contrast, in 2010, you guys finished top of the group above England and then barely lost to Ghana in the round of 16. But what was the main difference you would say between those 2 teams in your opinion? Leadership, talent, chemistry, luck. Can you compare and contrast those 2 teams for me?
I think at the end of the day, it's chemistry,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that both teams were capable and have qualities. Both had qualities to go to certainly get out of the group and maybe even into the quarterfinals. Both groups, very much like the team did in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it becomes about chemistry on and off the field,
Right.
and atmosphere being set by the coaches, by the staff, by the players, by the team's leaders, and you can't forget in tournament play like this, like World Cups, you're together prior to World Cup for a good 3 weeks in preparation, and during the World Cup, it's going to be at least another 2 weeks. So you're together for a long time, and
Yep.
chemistry becomes extremely important. And this is something that I believe American teams can excel in, and I think we have, and I think we've always showed good performances in World Cups. With the exception maybe of 2006. And on the other hand, if you look at it, really is for those 3 group games, it's in a span of maybe 10, 12 days. If
Yeah.
you're having just an off moment for those few days, for that week and a half or 2 weeks, then you're out of a tournament. So sometimes a little luck and sometimes a little fortunate as well, with injuries here and there as well. So but I think the deciding factor is chemistry.
And I agree with you on that point. I mean, I think a big reason why the U.S. is able to compete against bigger nations is because of how tight knit the group is, and I think that it's so important. I mean, even looking back on that win against Spain in 2009, that Spain team hadn't lost in 36 games or something like that, and then the U.S. came in and beat them, which was pretty unreal. Did you play in that game?
No, I wasn't traveling at that point. I think we had for club reasons. I think the season had already started, and I wasn't
Oh,
involved in that game.
okay.
Or I was battling an injury. It's a long time. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah,
Long
yeah.
time ago. Um,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Sorry. In the 2010 World Cup, you were an ever-present figure. I mean, starting and playing in every minute of every game, all 390 minutes, which is incredible. How big of an accomplishment was that for you?
Um, well, it's certainly something I expected of myself. So it was something that I anticipated was feasible and something
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do. Because I wanted to help and be part of the team and do my best. Whether or not you play every minute or not, that's something a coach decides.
Right.
Um, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed every single minute of it. I mean, both World Cups that I was able to play in were completely different experiences on and off the field.
Mm-hmm.
In 2006, it was in the country that I had played my entire career in. My entire family was there, extended family was there, so it was a circus off the field and on the field as well. And in South Africa, nobody came, so I was there alone. I was really able to focus on just
Mm-hmm.
just the game and the tournament and the team, which was a completely different experience, which was really enjoyable on one end. But obviously, you always want to share moments like that with family and friends too.
Right. Well, you also had an assist in that World Cup against Slovenia that sparked that comeback. But I mean, a beautiful little teasing ball curled around the defender down the line, which allowed Landon to slip in behind and score. It was a great finish, but I don't feel like the assist gets enough credit.
Oh, that's part of the game. Playing with Landon was fantastic. Landon was just so lethal moving forward, and I was happy to maybe take some of the responsibilities off his shoulders in the defensive end to enable him to
Yeah, right.
succeed and excel moving forward. And yeah, that's being a part of a team, and that's part of the mentality of a defender is where you guys may not get all the limelight, but you're certainly an important part of the success, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
And did you expect that ball to turn out as good as it did?
Yeah, absolutely.
um, well, yeah, that was. I'll remember that goal really in particular. I mean, it was an amazing game, but that goal, just considering the angle that Landon was at, and how he was able to bury that. But speaking of you and Landon's, kind of on field relationship, um, did you guys usually played on the same side during that World Cup, didn't you?
Yes.
And how was your relationship with him off the field? How would you describe his personality?
Oh, that is easygoing, and also from Southern California, and
Mm-hmm.
easygoing guy. Um, very uncomplicated.
Right.
I wouldn't say we were best friends or best mates, and he wasn't a part of. He was a few years younger than I was. I think Landon and Demarcus Beasley. They were in the academy in Florida. They grew up in, um, and my generation, we all went to college, and none of
Right.
us really went straight from high school into the freshman game
Mm-hmm.
like they did. So, um, and through the under 18s, under 20s, my group, my generation with Carlos and Tim and Nick Raimondo, we had our own little group, but the relationship with Landon was important, obviously on the field, but off the field. I think the best way to describe it was really easy and just natural and mutual interest as well. We both played in Germany a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
for the amount of time he spent there, his German is excellent. I don't know how it is anymore. I haven't spoken to him in a while, but Landon's a smart guy. And I think he's I think it's just fine. So there was mutual respect there and a very easy relationship. So like I said, we weren't best friends, but
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyed each other's company when we saw each other.
Well, yeah, I wish he would have. I mean, he was pretty young when he left Leverkusen. I wish he would have stuck around. I think he could have really done well in the Bundesliga, but he definitely made a name for himself in the MLS.
Oh yeah, I mean he had a fantastic career, and the Bundesliga when you get over here, one of the things is, I mean, they're not going to give you a whole lot of time
right.
to develop and to grow, especially as an offensive player. I think maybe it's a little easier as a defensive player or
Mm-hmm.
somebody who kind of comes on the scenes on the wings. As an offensive player, you need to be prolific. You need to be effective right away. If you're not posting numbers right away, then you're probably not going to get the benefit of the doubt the week after. So I think, unfortunately for him, maybe it was a few years too soon. Who knows? I think, to be fair, he's the one you need to ask that question, not me. So, but I do believe Landon had the tools to play very, very high at all levels of the game. So, and he did
Mm-hmm.
later in his career.
Right, right. Coming over or going over to England and playing with Everton, he proved that he could play at that level. But which was the better moment for you? Coming back to draw with Slovenia should have been a win, or Landon's goal against Algeria?
Um, well, I think, I mean, I'll definitely just say the goal against Algeria. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
the culmination of all the hard work and the emotions prior to that moment, but definitely would not have been possible if we didn't have that wake up call and those moments, those feelings in the game against Slovenia. I think that first goal and the way Landon finished as well. I mean, that just sends a message as well.
Yep.
To finish like that emphatically, and that just kind of sends a shockwave right through your own team, but more importantly in the opponents that say, "Oh, they're awake and they're here and they want more." And yes, you're absolutely right. We were robbed of 3 points in that game. So, but I think the performance in the second half was the performance we had hoped for ourselves in the first half, and just didn't happen the way we expected. I think there was a case of a little bit of nerves and to be fair, a good Slovenia squad as well. I mean, they were very good in the first half, but for the most part, we were too passive in the first half. We didn't believe in ourselves enough, and we changed that at halftime and showed what we could do. And I think continued that in the following 180 minutes against England and as well.
Right. And I know in that game against Slovenia, did you guys come out in the second half playing with three in the back?
I don't believe so. I think I'd have to look back at the tapes to be honest with you. I believe we stayed the same. Maybe at some point in the game we pushed numbers forward. That might be right. Um, at what point in the game that was, I'm not quite sure.
Right.
Those small details sort of get filtered out.
Understandable. Well, after that goal against Algeria, were you involved in the dog pile, or did you stay back with Tim?
No. I mean, at that point in the game, it was up and down action. I think Algeria was trying to win the game. We were trying to win the game, and as an outside back, you're doing a lot of running and trying to get on the attack, which is something I love to do as well. And that game was no different. So up and down. I think the way that goal happened, it was across the far post. We were actually quite fortunate that it wasn't more dangerous than it actually was. Timmy made a save and threw the ball forward, so I was in our own box, almost on our own
Right.
6-yard box. Yeah, it was too far away. And when that goal was scored, I just looked to my left, to Jay, to Merritt, and to Carlos, and to Tim. And I don't know where Carlos was, but Tim and Jay and I, we found each other, and we're so ecstatic. And we just said, "No, we're going to stay here and have our own little dog pile. That other one's too far away."
Yeah, just a little defender dog pile in the back.
Yeah.
Well, what's the most memorable moment for you in your career as a footballer? I mean, could have been that, maybe in Germany or maybe at La Jolla.
So many. I would think I would choose probably one at every level. So there was one in club soccer, one at the university level, one at the youth national teams, one at the senior national team. One obviously at Hannover 96, and then. But I think in the end, something that was really gratifying to me, and something that I enjoyed, but I didn't really enjoy, and I have to thank my agent at the time for making me do it, because it's not something I didn't want to do. It was having a farewell game at my club in Hanover, and because I don't like to be in the limelight, but he had forced me to do it, and it was a really gratifying experience and something I'm really, really happy I went through with, um, because you get to see a lot of the old faces, and once you retire, then you really hear and feel the appreciation of your efforts afterwards. And
Right.
the amount of people that showed up for the game, and the ex-players and friends who showed up, and that whole experience was just an amazing experience, and certainly something that I'll never forget.
Yep. And if you were in charge of the U.S. men's national team, which could definitely still happen at some point, what would you do to improve it? Are there a couple of strategies that you would implement?
Mm. I won't get into tactics. That's a little. I think we're going to need another 2 hours for that to break the game down and build it back up again.
Yeah.
I think something we touched on earlier is extremely important, and I know Greg is a fantastic coach and is doing a good job. So, and I know he spends times on this, but I think something the U.S. national team has always had. And if you're looking back at the 90 World Cup team and the 94 World Cup team, I'd done not too long ago, a podcast with Tony Miola and Denny Dunseth, and we talked about some of these older teams and generations. I think something that the U.S. national team has always had and should never lose is that when opponents play against us, the first thing that goes through their head in the scouting report that the opposing coaches have is always, we do not want to play against them. And it's a tough team to play against. And I think that is something that the U.S. national team can never lose. And to answer your question, I think that's a responsibility of the coaching staff. That's a responsibility of the federation. And that's a responsibility when it comes into selection process as well. And in the end, it's a responsibility of the players. U.S. national team should always be a team who are extremely difficult to beat, first and foremost. And then, obviously, we want to develop our country and our team on the tactics and the quality of the game in the end. We want to get better. And I think we have been getting better. And I think that, the youngest generation of players playing consistently at the top level, think of Christian and now Tyler in Leipzig was, and Weston McKinney and Schalke, some players, week in and week out play an extremely high level. If they can move that into the national team and if other players can see that, younger players can see that and raise their bar, I think the quality of the men's team will get better, not automatically, but will get better. But like I said, that one component of just being an extremely hard team to beat and a really tight-knit group, that's something that I personally hope the U.S. national team will never lose.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think, based on that, I think that is why our 2010 team was, one of our best or our best U.S. men's national team squad that I've seen, just because I feel like Bob really embraced that. You guys really disrupted the other teams, prevented them from playing their game, played a little bit direct, but you guys got results. And in the end, that's the most important thing. And I know you've got to run and we're kind of running out of time here, but just a couple quick questions before we wrap things up. The first one is, who's the best player that you played against in your career, and what do you remember about them?
That's an easy one. That's Lionel Messi. I don't think I need to answer that question. I think everything about him. I'll just put it this way: I felt it was completely unfair to play against him because he had so many more tools than I have ever had, and what a pleasure. Extremely. He was born to play the game. He's perfect in every way. He's creative. He's dangerous. I think we can get into his defensive responsibilities or not. But I think somebody who brings that much quality and effectiveness on the offensive game that really we don't really need to talk about the defensive end at all.
Right.
Truly, in my opinion, the greatest player that we've seen in a long, long, long time.
And I saw recently that he, whether it's true or not, I'm not sure, that he told Barcelona that he wants to leave this summer. But if that is the case, what team would you like to see him most on, if not Barcelona?
Oh, I think Hannover 96 would find room for him. I think that would be a wonderful fit. And I think he would sell out every weekend. So for Hannover, it would be a great move. I don't know how excited Lionel is about that move, but if he and his agent need help, I can definitely help him sort that out. Any team in the world right now, if I were to pick, I think Man City would fit well. I think he could definitely fit in right away there. I think he would help them. I think it would be interesting to see him in Italy, to be honest with you. Italy has been known, for their defensive tactics. And when you watch the Italian game, it's at sometimes maybe not the fastest paced game, but I think it's because of most of the teams are very well coached. There's a lot of tactics involved, and so I think it would be interesting for him to play in that league and see how much he could impact that league. But I think England would be the move for him, and City, it would be a natural move because he had played for that coach previously. So that's if he were to move, I would suspect him to move there.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that would be the most fitting, and I just think it would be a lot of fun to watch him in the Prem. But what do you think you would have done for a living if you didn't play soccer?
Well, I think I'd have been a teacher.
Really?
Well, yeah, I think for sure. I mean, that's what I'm doing now. Coaching is nothing other than teaching, and it's something that I've enjoyed learning about. Getting all of these licenses that you're required to get.
Mm-hmm.
Learning process of the pro license gets into a lot of psychology and the learning process in general at all ages. Youths and young adults, adolescents, and then moving into adults. So in leadership, a lot of components go into it. So it's an interesting process. I love being around people. I love being in those atmospheres, and I love seeing. I love being a part of groups that function well, and groups that function well are have good leadership and have good people involved, and is just a well-functioning machine. That's something I've loved being a part of, and that's something that I've tried to help move along in my career and being a part of teams. So it comes completely natural to me. So yeah, to answer your question, I think it would have been a teacher. I don't know if it would have been first grade, second grade, college professor, special ed. I have no idea in what direction, but certainly a teacher.
And in your, if you could, now that you're into coaching, if you could choose a team to coach for, almost like your ultimate goal, if you could be the head coach of any professional team, would there be a team that you would choose?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think looking at my career, I had expectations how I carried myself and how much effort I put in and how much I improved, but I had no expectations at what team I played for or at how far I could further my skills and at what level I could play at. Because growing up in Southern California, it's really hard to say, yes, it's my goal to play for Manchester United,
right,
or to play for Liverpool. I think that wouldn't have been realistic at the time. So, and I look at coaching the same way. Because I've been involved in this club in Hannover for so long, I would love to be the head coach here at some point. And my time with the U.S. national team was so fantastic. I love being a part of the group and the process and the federation. And it's a very well-run program that I would certainly love to coach that team at some point. If it's not the A team, a youth team. And then uncharted territory for me would be the MLS. Because I hadn't had that experience as a player, but it's something I would love to experience as a coach.
And would you ever think about, just seeing Landon going and helping start, the San Diego Loyal, if you were asked to come back here and help form a team like that, whether in the USL or MLS, would you think you would say yes?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And well, hopefully you come back here at some point. I'd love to meet you in person. But last one here, what is your favorite coffee drink? I hear you're a big coffee guy.
Oh yeah. I mean, right now I'm going to say it's going to be a flat white, but the basis for all coffee drinks is just a simple espresso. So, but right now I think what I tend to order is a flat white.
And is there a certain shop or coffee shop that you go to in Hanover every time?
Yes, there is. It's called Massimo's, and it's a friend of mine. He has, in my opinion, the best roast, the best machine, just the whole package is there, and serves it with a smile. So that's always important as well.
Oh yeah, adds a little something. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time to do this. I really enjoyed it. I know you're a really busy guy, and I hope everything goes well in your coaching career, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Steve.
Take care.